I'm JP Moss here. Well, on this very warm end of July 2020, we're heading into August. The UFO world, it seems we're getting reports of there's going to be a release, something from the Pentagon, something from the American government. Okay. But again, on that side of that note, there seems to be, I wouldn't call it fake news. There's a lot of disinformation running around, clever wording about that. It's like somebody said in the New York Times, there's going to be a revelation from off-world craft or something, crashed remains. It's quite an extraordinary statement. It was redacted. Now, if I say retraction, you're saying that they're going to say that they never said that or they didn't mean that, and end of article gone. No, and it's all weather balloons. This is what's kind of what they call redaction. This is where it's the same points being put across but worded in a different way. Foreign unknown material it becomes the wording. Then they say, well, we misquote some people. They didn't say that. And again, this is coming from credible professionals in the New York Times. Furthermore, as of recent times, I have been bombarded with a higher degree of negativity across social media sites. And bearing in mind, I've got hundreds of videos on YouTube. I've been on here 10 years, Facebook 10 years. I've had Instagram for a while, Twitter, and it's been pretty quiet. And now with an upsurge increase of these reports that there's going to be revelations coming forward, there seems to be some elements out there that are sniffing this out, saying, well, we don't want JP Moss. And I think a few other of my colleagues I've conferred with, without dropping names, have also agreed that there seems to be a contingent of people with a deliberate plan to smear us off social media sites, bully us off, as it were. I have to warn anybody watching this or subscribing just for the purpose of trolling. YouTube has strict policies. You have to watch your comments. Keep them nice. They're easy to report. I don't have to say anything. YouTube will catch it themselves. And I've already told YouTube, watch this space. Watch this space. So they're aware. They're aware. Rather than me having to monitor negative, dark, or harsh, or defamatory, or derogatory comments, they're never okay. Keep it nice, keep it polite, keep it constructive. The problem is, with defamatory, derogatory comments comes this. There is a bit of there's a bit of a back and forth about trolls and comments like that. Professional media people will say don't respond to them. Some will say remove the comments. Some say leave them there. Well, if 1,000 people comment negatively to a guy's video, you're like, well, how can it not be a conspiracy at this point that somebody's trying to run that guy out of the door? And what an interesting timing that's happening now, specifically now with this groundbreaking revelations entering the public of, the American government beginning to step forward with something of admittance. We're talking all the way across the line here. There's been revelations of Navy pilots, Air Force pilots are being interviewed who are currently serving. Who's that guy? Elizondo. He was with the Pentagon. He was that researcher that went running around. They even put him on TV show. And he was interviewing these people currently serving in the American government. Spoke to a senator. And it's like, this stuff is quite, they haven't done that before. Well, the reason is, it's very clearly simple that you want to have your foot in the door when you know that aliens are going to be making that contact, whether we want it or not. That's coming. And you say, well, how would they do it? How would they do that? Are they going to land somewhere? No. Fly over in a fleet? That could be explained away. So how do you go about making mass contact? How do you make yourself known to everybody? Well, there seems to be this idea that, and it emanates from theoretical scientists from the SETI program and from other ET programs that have never claimed to have any UFO or alien contact or any experience. Everybody seems to defer to them. No one listens to the experiencers and the ufologists, and we're saying this is how it is, this is what's going to happen. And for a lot of us you talk to and you listen to, that's exactly what is happening. They seem to be under this idea that the aliens don't understand English or wouldn't understand English. Now, there are reports from the Rendlesham Forest incident from the early 80s. One of the airmen, he claimed to have received a binary message in his brain, an upload from this alien craft. It was then translated and it said something. Well, everybody seems to swallow that one down. I don't disbelieve the guy, but why would anybody, oh no, we don't want to believe that they can talk to us. Well, first of all, they is a general term for one conglomerate of an alien race. You are not dealing with one all-empowering or one alien race. There are many different species engaging this planet. The Rendlesham Forest airmen may have only engaged one of many. Sergeant Clifford Stone went on to say that there were roughly over 50 to 57 different species that they had in their files. There's alleged intelligence reports leaked out of Russia from the former Soviet Union. The Kremlin alleges, these are alleged documents. I can't say they're fact. I can't confirm that. They go on to say that there are, what was the number? 30, 35 different species, and they have these so-called photos and sketches and from their own documentation. I'm only speaking of the Sasani civilization, of a hybrid human-alien civilization. I don't, and my contact with Benico. I don't, I took the pictures in the forest. I was guided out there through some radio research. The voices came over the radio, recorded them. We're in the forest by the cell phone tower. Went out there, began taking pictures, digital, color, infrared, believing against all else, perhaps I'll get some pictures of Benico. What came up, what shocked me, what shocked my sons were these large insect creatures. And I went back, I did science on that. It was very extensive, 3 years in that forest. It was a very small woodland, so it made the research a bit easier. And so I mapped it out on a map with a grid, and I went exhaustively from one end of that little woodland to the other, and I took photos all the way down at different times of the week, different times of the day. Then I went back and observed any entities in the photos. Where were they most likely? They were most near the cell phone tower in that part of the woodland. They were not anywhere beyond the woodland, near the river, near where these horses were kept, in a field beyond that. Then I went back to the location. I mapped out where the entities came up in the photos in that part of the woodland by the cell phone tower, time of day, and then went back there and took photos again in that same location and observed if there was any entities in the photos at that time. But at different times I varied it up quite a bit. So this is an experiment. Science asks you to do this more than a few times to satisfy the scientific method. Then on certain days I noted it was equally important when the entities did not appear in the photos in the same location where they appeared days before. So then I went back and took photos again in that same location repeatedly. I can't get them back in that location, and then a month later went back to that same location, then got an entity in that photo, but not in the same position or the same pose, which would suggest trees or leaves or light variations, but it was the same looking kind of entity, but in that location, but sitting in a different position in that quadrant that I had mapped out. And equally important, very important, the entities weren't varied in shapes and sizes like blobs or masses or orbs or different kinds. They all consistently had the same praying mantis insect looking look to them. All of them, with the exception of a very few that looked like gray zetas in black uniforms, large white heads, black eyes. They look like offshoots of these insect creatures. And then it was like David Attenborough in a nature special. I took so many hundreds of these pictures I've got stored on several hard drives that are not connected to the internet at this time for safekeeping, so they can't be hacked. I made hard copies, color hard copies on paper in a red folder, and I called the red folder the red folder. It is a red folder and is called the red folder. I then observed characteristics of their behavior with each other. I did videos, I did pictures, infrared pictures. I noticed that the gray zeta creatures seem to kind of be they seem to proceed coming up at the whenever I had them in the photos. They came before the insect mantids. The insect mantids would then appear after them in that same location at a different time, sometimes even the same time. I took 10, 15 pictures in the same area of the forest, just like a NASA rover repeatedly. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I would observe there was this zeta-looking creature, then there was nothing, then there was a mantid of some kind coming behind it. Then there was the mantid, then there would be 3 or 4 of these zeta-looking creatures, and there was the mantids. They always kept distance from the zetas. The mantids always seemed to be facing them. The zetas often had their backs to them. Zetas, in some instances, had their heads down facing the insect creatures, like they were doing this. So I then had to conclude from observation alone, Dr. David Jacobs' research of hundreds of abduction cases, where he said the insectoid creatures, and Linda Moton Howell's research from abduction cases alone. They claimed the insect mantoids were the ones leading the Zeta Greys, and the Zeta Greys created the hybrids. So I then, just from observation, I then concluded these were not leaves, trees, or light aberrations. These were not coincidences. That this was the same looking type of creatures, the same 3 ridges, the same large wraparound eyes, 4 finger digits, long fingers. Some were 3 feet tall, as described by Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, former Captain Air Force, that said that they had creatures there. Exact shape, exact description to everything that this Air Force captain described from one of these documentaries. It was quite chilling. He described exactly what I had in my photos. Then you had zetas, which were slightly 4 or 5 feet tall. Mantids were 8, 9 feet tall, and they were proper insect mantids.